At least with the game, we didn't have to wait 2 years to figure out what happens after that damn cliffhanger. God, this is gonna be a long 2 years. Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel, and today we are reviewing the Season 2 finale of The Last of Us. I want to preface this video by saying that I am a massive fan of The Last of Us Part 2 game. It's my favorite game of all time, and because of that, I'll be splitting this video up into two different sections. The majority of this video will be spoilers for this episode for any non-gamers with comparison to the game up until this point in time, and the last section will be talking about the implications this episode has for Season 3 with spoilers from the game. Of course, I'll leave time codes down below if you want to jump around, but without further ado, let's get into the episode itself. And of course, if you do enjoy this video, make sure you guys leave a like and subscribe to the channel to see more reviews just like this one. This is sadly the last episode of The Last of Us, so no more weekly show reviews for right now until the next show comes out. But as for right now, I'll have movie reviews out every single weekend as well, so stay tuned for that. Now let's get on to the show. This episode is titled Convergence, and it continues this show's exploration of consequences, which I mentioned in my first review for the first episode of this season, which is what this story is largely about. Every decision has consequences, and we followed Ellie, who is spiraling on a path towards darkness ever since Joel's death in episode 2. And I'm very curious to ask any non-gamers watching this review as to what you think of Ellie at this point in the story, because for me, I understand her drive and passion in wanting revenge, but she has made every single wrong decision she possibly could have made, and I love it.
My community was beaten to death in front of me while I was forced to fucking watch. So don't look at me like you're better than me, or like you'd do anything differently if you were in my shoes, because you're not.
I think the show has done an excellent job at building up to the story that happens inside of this episode. Since the last episode was the Joel flashback episode, which I missed out on because I was, out of town last week, so I didn't have a video. I'll say that the episode was very good, one of the best in the season, but the last thing we saw in present time was Ellie beating information out of Nora, which she decided to do when, she separated from Dina and Jesse in episode 5. In the game, this was the moment where I officially stopped rooting for Ellie's revenge, but here is a little bit different, because when that episode ended, I wasn't quite in a place to denounce everything Ellie was doing. I think Bella Ramsey's take on Ellie through performance and through the writing has been much more likable than the video game counterpart, which I was a bit conflicted by, but that's also because I know where the story ends up. This episode begins with seeing the true consequences our supporting characters are facing in the wake of Ellie's decision to go to Seattle. Dina has been very on board with everything Ellie has wanted to do here, but we see her desperately saying that she cannot die inside of this episode. She has much more to live for now that she is pregnant, and it took her being shot to fully snap out of that mindset that they are safe, because they're not. The recklessness has become real, and when Ellie comes back to the theater and she tells Dina what Joel did, it's an even more glaring realization that what they are doing is frankly more than reckless. All this drive she's had has been built on a lie. This all goes back to Gale saying in episode 3 that Ellie doesn't just lie, she is a liar, and I think that this scene does a lot to push my feelings into how I felt inside of the game. Part of that is because a moment like this happens immediately after the cut to black when Ellie is beating Nora. I didn't have to wait 2 weeks between that moment and seeing the consequences of her actions take shape, so any criticisms that I had leaving episode 5 was quickly washed away from this opening, although I think the pacing of this storyline was affected by the placement of the Joel flashback episode, although again, that episode was phenomenal. But things aren't entirely dire for Ellie and her relationships just yet. Dina still walks out and gives Ellie a good luck charm as her and Jesse set out to find Tommy. There's a look of respect and love between the two, which also mirrors the moment between Ellie and Jesse at the end of this episode. Despite all the things that she's done up until this point, and even what she does by the end of this episode, her people are still willing to forgive her. I knew Jesse was going to eat it in this episode, so I'm glad they spent a good amount of time with him before his end. Young Mazzino has brought so much charisma to this character and made him as likable as possible with the limited screen time that he's had this season. He is the most morally sound character in this series, depending on your perspective, and I liked how Ellie clashed with his ideologies here. Seeing the Seraphite kid being dragged away by the WLFs was a great way to highlight the differences between these characters, because even Jesse, the man who is supposed to run Jackson one day as a morally sound leader, was willing to let a kid die for the safety of his own community. He will do anything for the greater good, which is the exact opposite of Joel and in turn Ellie, who would burn the world down to save someone or to get revenge without any care for who else burns down in the process. The only bits of information Ellie got out of beating Nora was 2 words: wheel and whale. Her and Jesse overhear sniper shots in the distance, which is most likely coming from Tommy, leading them to get some high ground in order to get a sense of direction of where they are. This leads to Ellie to spot the aquarium next to a Ferris wheel, which puts her right back on the path of revenge, which she seemingly was willing to abandon once Dina got hurt. She decides once again to abandon her friends in order to go on this quest for revenge, which led me to question her decisions once again as we all await the consequences to fall in her lap. On her way to the pier, we see a ton of WLFs, including Isaac, preparing for some large-scale mission, which we have been hinting at throughout the entirety of this season. There have been a ton of things that have happened in the background of our time here in Seattle that have hinted at moments in the second half of the game, and I think this episode, along with this season as a whole, has done a great job at setting the stage for the WLF and Seraphite War, which we'll get eventually next season, which, of course, I'll get into more of that when I get into game spoilers for the second half of this review. One change we get here, however, is seeing Ellie on the Seraphite Island. In the game, Ellie sets off on her boat to the aquarium, just like here in the show. A large wave does come in and flips her boat, and you have to swim through the stormy ocean waters to get over to the aquarium. It's a very tense sequence, but that doesn't exactly happen here. She instead washes up on an island and is captured by a bunch of Seraphites, which caught me extremely off guard. I honestly don't know why this was necessary at all. I think the whole point of it was to show that the WLFs are heading on a mission to this island, which we can now presume has something to do with these Seraphites. All this really did was confirm that it does have something to do with the Seraphites to any non-gamers, and that there is some village that is on this island that we see coming under heavy fire as Ellie gets back on the boat with a very convenient moment of luck where she's able to escape the Seraphites. But in a finale filled with a bunch of 10 out of 10 moments, I guess I'll accept this little nitpick from me, but honestly didn't really see the full purpose of this entire sequence on the Seraphite Island with Ellie. Ellie eventually does arrive at the aquarium to find Mel and Owen, and luckily no Alice, to which any gamers will thankfully be glad that we did not get that sequence inside of this game. If you know, you know, but that doesn't stop this entire sequence from being absolutely gut-wrenching and frankly even more devastating in this show than it was in the game. And I thought I was mentally prepared to see Ellie kill these characters, but the way that it goes down here is just simply so much worse. In the game, the interaction begins the exact same way. Ellie confronts them over Abby's whereabouts. She uses the same tactic that Joel used by making one of them point to her location on a map, and if the other one points the same spot, she'll know that they are telling the truth. Owen, of course, goes for a gun, which also happens inside of the game, leading Ellie to shoot him first. However, in the game, Mel then goes for Ellie's gun, which eventually just leads her to get shot. Ellie then sees that she is pregnant, and the dark realization of what she just did sets in. Now, from Mel's perspective, inside of the game, it's incredibly stupid for her to do this. Ellie doesn't know that she's pregnant, so if someone tries to attack her, of course it makes sense that Ellie would defend herself, but if you're Mel and you know that you are pregnant, well, that would pretty much guarantee that you'll get, shot and that you'll die if you go for this gun, which, she literally just saw her kill Owen, and so it just doesn't really make sense inside of the game. So what in the world does this show do instead? Well, once Ellie pulls the trigger, you see the gunshot went through Owen's neck and out the back, eventually striking the cabinets behind them. But it is also revealed that Mel's neck was also grazed by this bullet, and she begins to bleed out slowly. Mel then reveals to Ellie that she is pregnant, and knowing that she is about to die, she asks Ellie to cut her baby out in order to save it, which is just devastating. Bella Ramsey and Ariella Barrera are phenomenal in this scene and had me absolutely stunned and on the verge of a breakdown. This moment hits so incredibly hard, especially as Ariella asks if the baby is out as she goes out of consciousness. It is honestly one of the most gut-wrenching things I've seen in this show and just in TV in general, and that's saying a lot. And it's easily the lowest moment in Ellie's life, who is now finally realizing that her actions have dire consequences.
You're doing good. You're doing really good. Is it out?
In another world, she is Abby going after Ellie and in turn accidentally killing a pregnant Dina. It's a dark realization, but one that the character desperately needs. Tommy and Jesse show up and see what she has done. They do eventually go back to the theater, which is where we get that scene between Jesse and Ellie making amends. Even after what he just saw Ellie do, he is still willing to forgive her because he's just that good of a person, and because he understands that, yes, he is the person to put the lives of the many over the lives of the few, but he's glad that he has someone in his corner that would go to these dire lengths to save the lives of the few.
If I were out there somewhere, lost and in trouble, you would set the world on fire to save me.
I would.
It is a beautiful moment undercut by shouting and gunshots in the front of the theater. Jesse and Ellie burst through the door, and in a moment, in a singular, quick, and shocking moment for us watching the show and me playing the game all those years ago, Jesse is shot and killed. He is simply gone, and the person that we've been chasing after since episode 2 is standing right in front of Ellie with a gun pointed at Tommy. Kaitlyn Dever once again shows that even in the briefest of screen time that she has in this episode, that she has got what it takes to pull off this character's rage. As she lifts the gun and fires at Ellie, we then cut to black. This is exactly how it goes down inside of the game, pretty much shot for shot, and I was honestly wondering to see if we'd see the sequence play out in its entirety, as I wasn't sure if Craig Mazin, Neil Druckmann, and Hallie Gross had the guts to cut away from this moment for a second time, but I'm so glad that they did, because it just isn't the climax to Ellie's story, it's also the climax to Abby's story, so we need to see how she got into this moment. We then fade in to see Abby wake up in a massive stadium that acts as the home base for the WLFs, and we get the text Seattle Day 1. So to any non-gamers wondering, at this point in the game, we then play as Abby and we get to see everything that she's been up to during Ellie's own journey. And I hope that that shift in perspective doesn't push audiences away from the show as it did for many people inside of the game. Abby's storyline may not be as personal for the character or for us the audience as we cared so much about Joel and Ellie at this point in the story, but it is filled with so many fantastic moments, and the scope of the story is much larger than what we just got here, and it also showcases one of my favorite character arcs of all time.
I let you live. I let you live. And you wasted it.
So hopefully this show has earned enough goodwill in the audience for everyone to return for the next season, which, according to Catherine O'Hara, will be entirely Abby's storyline. But the question lies about whether or not we will see only Abby's story or if we'll see what happens after. But in order to get into that, I'll have to get into spoilers for the game. So for any non-gamers, this is where I will leave you. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on this season as a whole, especially with this episode and the finale that we got here. I absolutely loved it, and most of all, I'm super curious to hear what you think of Ellie at this point in the story. Are you on board with her quest for revenge this season, or are you feeling regrets for what we have lost in the process? Let me know in the comment section down below, and without further ado, let's get into the game spoilers. There have been a ton of hints for Abby's storyline throughout the entirety of this season. We of course got a bit of her backstory in episode 1, but there's still plenty to see here. I'm sure next season will open up with Abby, her dad, Owen, and the zebra in Seattle, which I think that would be a great way to show how similar Abby was to Ellie through her love for her father figure. We'll probably get to see her perspective on Joel's rampage throughout the hospital, leading to her discovering her father's body, which will lead her to wake up in this moment from her repeating nightmares. The way that she woke up here could hint at her still having these dreams despite killing Joel, which will lead us down her arc for the season. We did get a hint at the Rat King in episode 5, which honestly completely missed. Elise Park mentioned that even the rats were gone in the lower levels of the WLF hospital, and the elevator door was cracked open, which led to Nora's perplexing look towards the elevator. While that is all happening with Nora, we know that Abby is on B3 getting hospital supplies for Yara and dealing with the Rat King, which is definitely one of my most anticipated moments of season 3. This episode had a ton of hints for season 3 as well. In the distance, we see a collapsed crane making a bridge between buildings, which will maybe come into play. The show is definitely going for a bit more realism than the game did, and a super high up bridge between buildings that were made by the Seraphites always felt like a bit of a stretch to me. I guess the wolves never look up inside of the game, but maybe that'll be different here for the show. We've seen a couple of murals of the Prophet throughout this season, and here we get to see that this mural looks different from the other ones that we saw previously, leading to Ellie asking if there's more than one of them, which I found very interesting because I don't remember that being the case inside of the game. I saw a couple theories of people saying that Alana Ubach's character might be the Prophet, which didn't make sense to me as the Prophet in the game was an Asian woman who had no direct ties with the WLFs, but that would honestly be really, really interesting for season 3. The original Prophet was said to have died 10 years previous from this season, so I wonder if others had, kind of claimed to take her place since her death. And the other thing that kind of hints at this is the fact that we haven't seen Hanrahan, or at least I don't think we've seen her in present day as of yet. Both times that we've seen her was when Isaac first, defected from Fedra to join the WLFs, which that was, quite a while before present day. And the other time was us setting up the hospital when they first found it, which had to have been many years before, Ellie and Nora stumbled upon all these spores in the air. I think that was all at least 10 years prior to current day, and so maybe she did eventually defect from the WLFs in a similar way to how Isaac left Fedra. That would give an even more personal vendetta between Isaac and when it comes to his hatred for the Seraphites. They've already done a lot to expand on Isaac as a character in this season, and knowing we'll follow the WLFs in season 3 probably means we'll get even deeper into this conflict than we ever did inside of the game. The game also never got too deep into the starfights themselves, so this would also be a great opportunity to do so. Maybe we'll even get to see more of Lev and Yara's life, leading to them defecting from these starfights as well. If The Last of Us Part 2 was about breaking cycles of violence, exploring Abby, Lev, and Yara all leaving their warring factions who are stuck in their own cycle of violence would be a great thematic through line for not only that season, but the show as a whole. And speaking of Lev and Yara, we also saw the operating table inside the aquarium, which hints at us seeing the brutal sequence that led to Yara's arm being crushed, which will be probably really gruesome, but I cannot wait to see that as well. The explosions on the Starfight Island hint at what would probably be an epic ending to their storylines, which leads me to believe that season 3 might entirely be Abby's storyline. What if the only time we see Bella Ramsey next season is in the finale, where we see how the confrontation goes inside of the theater, and maybe we see how she's able to move on with Dina, and at the very end of the finale we see that Tommy is telling Ellie that he has finally found Abby after a couple years, and we can possibly see an entire season 4 with what happens in the epilogue, with Ellie still not learning her lesson and going after Abby at the cost of her newly found family and Dina and JJ, which once they get to that part, it is going to be so devastating because I care so much more in this show about Dina and Ellie's relationship than I ever did really inside of the game. I think it would be extremely bold of them to kill off Joel in season 2 and almost entirely omit our second lead in Ellie for all of season 3 to focus solely on Caitlin Dever's Abby, but as someone who loves Abby's half of the story, probably even more so than the Ellie side of the story inside the game because of how epic that storyline was and because I love those characters so much more, I think I'd honestly prefer this, but I don't think that is the case for everybody who's played the game. And I'm sure that a season 4 that focuses on Abby and Ellie both equally for the epilogue, which would definitely be expanded upon greatly because it would have to stretch out that section of the game into an entire season of television, I think that'd be really cool to see, and giving that much time between seeing Ellie here and seeing how Bella ages up in the years between season 2 and 4, I think that would help with the time jumps as well. It's technically possible to do season 3 with Seattle Day 1 through 3 being the first 3 episodes and then having the last couple of episodes showcase the epilogue, but only 3 episodes with Abby's storyline I think would be a disservice to how great her arc is in that. And we did get an extra 3 months between Joel's death and the time that Ellie goes off to Seattle, so there's more time there to explore as well. But that's just what I'm thinking of for the future of this show moving forward. I was hoping that we end on this cliffhanger for season 2, but honestly, I didn't think that they would go for it considering how upset gamers were at that moment being cut off so abruptly inside the game, but maybe it works better in this medium, or maybe it's worse and the review bombing for season 3 will somehow be even lower than season 2, but hey, you can't stop the bigots from being bigots. So those are going to be my thoughts on The Last of Us Season 2. I absolutely loved this season of television. Frankly, this has been one of the best adaptations that I have ever seen. It has a much better balance between character, action, and the deeper meanings behind the story than Season 1, which I already thought was great because I think the characters and the conflicts and the complex nature of everything both in the game and the show is just so much better and so much more heightened than it was in Season 1. And as this is adapting my favorite game of all time, I couldn't be happier as both a fan of television in general and a fan of gaming. And of course, I'm very curious to hear the gamers' thoughts on this season as a whole as well in the comment section down below. And if you do comment, please preface with a spoiler tag if you want to get into anything from the potential season 3 or the rest of the game as it is. And as always, if you did enjoy this review, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more reviews just like this one. I believe that this is the last show I'll be reviewing on the channel for a while, so keep an eye out for future movie reviews here on the channel. I'll definitely be talking about Bring Her Back next week, which I am extremely excited to see, so stay tuned for that one as well. So thanks everyone for watching, and I hope to see you all in my next one.